Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with me, Christian Harris. Is this the end for safety as we know it? That is the big question that's being posed today as part of this safety roundtable discussion that I'm happy to be sharing with you on the podcast this week. There's lots and lots of things that are happening in the world of safety, big trends that are buffering us and pushing us in different directions and making sure that things are constantly changing. The session today really, therefore, is about, does this mean the end of the way we've done things before? What are the benefits and drawbacks of the way that traditionally we've done safety? And what does the future look like? So lots and lots to dive into. And I hope that you will enjoy and get some value from this discussion. Cheers.
Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with Christian Harris. We believe that proactive safety and risk management powers business performance. Each week we explore this theme, sharing guests, stories, insights, trends, hints and tips. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, and video versions are available on YouTube. But for now, let's join the conversation with Christian.
Great. So thank you for joining this session today on the Safety Roundtable. Great to see lots of you live on Zoom, and people are going to be joining on the replay, listening to this as a podcast, etc., as well. So welcome to you wherever you are joining us from. This is going to be the last of the Safety Roundtables for the summer. So we're going to have a little break over August due to holidays and so on and so forth. And then we'll be back in September and back into our fortnightly rhythm of safety roundtables. So just quickly, if you haven't joined one of these before, it's a live interactive session to discuss a topic. Very much welcome involvement, particularly today, in this discussion about the state of safety and where we're at, and is the traditional way of doing safety possibly coming to an end? That's the topic we're going to be talking about today. I think it's something that's worth discussing. It's a big trend that we're seeing over the years, adding more and more stuff into the safety role, or giving more and more stuff for the safety professional to do. Safety showing up in different aspects of organizations, reporting into different functions within organizations, ESG going on. There's loads and loads of stuff that is happening in terms of big trends. And for me, that warrants a discussion about, what does that mean for us? How should we respond to that? And where do we go from here as the safety profession to ensure that, as these changes are taking place, we're continuing to add value and ensure that safety is as important as it always has been. So if you're live on the Zoom, really welcome your involvement. Go to reactions, raise your hand, and I'll call you up and we can have a chat. You can also get involved in the chat on Zoom and wherever you are watching or listening to this as well. And if you're involved in the replay, then feel free to stick up a post on LinkedIn or something, tag me in, and we can continue the conversation. So a couple of big questions to start us off. These are some of the things that we should be thinking about as we get into this discussion. Once upon a time, safety had a very clear ownership, department, title, function. Now we're starting to see, or we are seeing, the lines kind of blurring. So safety's showing up in ESG reports, within HR dashboards, within operational KPIs. Now, as someone who has seen safety sometimes struggle to get heard and get valued and get seen and get things done, all of these things could be seen absolutely as a positive. If we're getting more embedded, then, that's great. But, who's kind of actually um, looking after this, and therefore is safety on its own um, kind of going to be evolved out, or is it going to die off? There's also this point around, are we stuck in the kind of old ways of doing things? So safety has some perception issues, perhaps among a large chunk of the population. Are we doing box ticking? Are we health and safety gone mad? Are we being too reactive? Are we too compliance heavy? Um, or is it just evolving? Is it being absorbed in something broader? Risk, culture, organizational health. So, if the profession is evolving, what's it evolving into? Um, Love to know actually, when was the last time someone in your business organization said, wow, safety really added value to that project? That is the sort of thing that we want to hear. When did that last happen for you? How are non-safety professionals perceiving what we're doing? And is that perception changing over time? If we are seeing HR and operations getting more involved, is that a positive thing, or is it sort of giving them another thing to do that they don't really want to be doing? And a question, I suppose, as well to think about here is, are we measuring the right things? We've spoken before about leading and lagging indicators. We've spoken about zero harm and the pros and cons of that approach. But, you know, are we still too focused on some of these lagging indicators, incident rates and so on? Should we be trying to shift the way we're doing things? Here's a question for you. If we disappeared tomorrow, would the business notice, or would others just fill the gap? Do we think maybe that the safety generalist is what's becoming obsolete? Perhaps we're going to be replaced by more niche experts, AI tools, cross-functional roles. One of the trends we're seeing in marketing, for example, and in finance is there's a trend towards having fractional heads of marketing or fractional heads of finance who come in with particular specialisms and they kind of work with an organization just in that area rather than um, in having a sort of generalist finance or marketing person. What do we feel about that? So a few sort of prompts, I suppose, from me to uh, try and get some thoughts going. So let me know if you want to come and have a chat with me about any of these things by going into reactions, raising your hand, or feel free to fire into the chat as we said. And then yeah, is the traditional model still relevant? And if it is still relevant, is it still working and stuff? But if it's not, then what might replace it? So what might safety evolve into? So there's a few sort of starting point thoughts for me to try and get the juices flowing. In the chat, if you're live with me on the Zoom here, give me a scale of 1 to 10. How confident are you that the current traditional approach to safety still works? 10 being super, super confident, and 1 being not so confident. Give me your thoughts on that in the chat. Lots of 5, 6s, and 7s. Okay, 5, 6, 7s, 4, 2. Okay, 5, 7, 4, 5. Yeah, 7. Okay, so what we're saying there, what the sense in the room seems to be that maybe it's working all right, but it perhaps couldn't be, could be better. So let's talk that through then. Who wants to come and explain their score? If you gave it a 5, why did you give it a 5? What feels broken? What isn't working? What do we think we could do better? And in the context of the overall discussion here, is this the end of safety? Uh, I don't believe it's the end of safety. I think safety will always be there, and I certainly hope it is because I'm a big advocate for safety. But what where are we going, and is it the end of traditional safety? If we seem to think like it appears we do, based on the scores we're getting today, that it isn't really working as well as it might be. Where does that leave us? Where are we going from here? Arvin's put in the chat, put 5 as our current approach prevents many obvious risks, but it feels very reactive. We're good at responding to incidents, but not as strong at anticipating new risks or truly understanding human factors in complex situations. It often feels like a tick box exercise rather than deeply embedded in our operations. I think that's a really strong series of points that you've made there, Alvin. I'm sure people would echo that, and it does ring true with my experience. Adele, we need to keep up more with the changing workplace. Yeah, the workplace obviously has evolved hugely, particularly since 2020 and the pandemic. And it's really interesting to see the different ways that organizations are now approaching the workplace. I've got friends who are working in almost fully remote businesses now, and then I've got other friends whose organizations are really hammering them on getting back into the office every day. So there does seem to be a very broad section of approaches to managing the workplace, and therefore that's going to impact on us as safety professionals in terms of what do we need to do to respond to that. Another comment here: there's still a negative safety culture in some areas, and people are reluctant to change. Yeah, that always reminds me of the cartoon where you have on the one hand, on the one side of the page, it's who wants change, and everyone's got their hand up in this big audience. And then on the other side of the page is who wants to change, and nobody has got their hands up because we like the idea of change, but we don't really like changing that much ourselves. Yeah, follow up about the workplace bit. Younger generation coming in and move from more traditional workplaces and way of working. Yeah, so my I played golf on the weekend with my I don't know if you call him my half brother-in-law, but he's my wife's half brother. So he's my brother-in-law, but he's a younger half sibling to my wife, and he was saying to me, I was asking him about his work and everything, and he said to me, pretty much his whole university career and the start of his career, he's on a graduate sort of scheme now. It's all been in this kind of hybrid Zoom Teams focused world. And, that's so different to what those of us who are like me in 40s, and even people in 30s, obviously, experienced in the past, so different. And they won't understand, I guess, how these things used to work before because they've never experienced it. So yeah, we do need to really think about that. And as you say, Adele, it's not a negative, just an observation. Um, Nicholas, people pay lip service, especially in my area of road safety, until there was an incident due to mobile device connectivity. Businesses don't see a problem until it's a cost them some money, cost them losses, both monetary and physical. Well, as the victim of uh, a car crash in 2012, um, which is actually what fueled my passion for this world of safety that we are working in. You may have heard me tell the story before, but in short, I was walking along the road and a car lost control, mounted the curb, and ran me over. That's what got me interested in safety. Um, yeah, I can tell you that road safety is definitely very important to me and a topic that is close to my heart. But I can absolutely see um, an organization being reluctant to invest until such time they've suffered some kind of loss, as you say. I suppose that's the challenge for us to think about how we can influence and persuade. And again, another great example there of how safety is changing and evolving. That, we've gone from 20 years ago, safety being almost certainly fully compliance driven, um, filling in forms and so on, to now, needing to be an influencer, a persuader, a communicator, um, a function that can drive change in an organization. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge and an opportunity that rings true. Um, Katerina said that she echoes that within environmental, and I would echo it within sort of occupational safety as well. I think, that is something that absolutely is core to this question I'm posing today of, how is our profession, how is the world of safety evolving? And I think, a key answer has to be we've got to get better at influencing, persuasion, etc. No safety culture in some organizations, and funding can be the driver or lack of driver for safety efforts. Buy-in at all levels is needed. Um, Need greater focus on health and long-term safety. Not many companies focus on occupational safety. Interesting comment that, Adrian, and we'll come back to that as we go. In the meantime, Mike, you've got your hand up. Do you want to come and spare everybody from me just droning on?
There we go. We're on now. You can hear me.
Yeah,
Thanks,
how you doing?
Christian. Yeah,
Are you well, Mike?
I'm very good. I'm very good. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, always enjoy these and thought I would sort of put my tuppence worth in. I think that we've seen a change in safety recently. It's become very much more people focused. We're more about people. We've got to take care of cultural diversity, as I think other people have hinted about. You've also got the wide range of jobs. I think going back to the old-fashioned safety, basically you looked after the people on the shop floor. I don't think anyone was worried about the people in the offices or, as you say, the people working from home. So there's been that whole dynamic change. But I really liked one of the comments that you made, and that's why I put my hand up. I really wanted to build out on that a little bit when you say, yeah, health and safety today is about persuasion and communication. It's about rather than using a big hammer to get your point across. You need to sometimes be a little bit more subtle and
Mm,
work with people and influence people more than just lay the law down. And I think that's one of the big changes that I see on a daily basis. Health and safety people who are battling to make that transition.
mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, thanks, Mike. I had a great conversation actually this morning, which I recorded for the podcast, and it'll be out next week with a guy called Andy Brown, who's a crisis. He was in the police for 30 years, and then he's done crisis management and hostage negotiation, and that was all about, what can we learn from having to persuade and influence people in that kind of really challenging and pressure-filled setting. But what can we take away from that and learn to go away into our businesses where hopefully we're not dealing with things like that, obviously on a regular basis at all. But yeah, what lessons can we learn from that and go away and implement? So I think that would be. I'm sure you'd enjoy that. You'll enjoy that episode, Mike, if you want to give that one a listen.
Thank you. I will do.
What are you doing, Mike, personally, to try to upskill yourself, I suppose, when it comes to that kind of softer skill set?
I think I came from a general management background into safety. My background was in chemistry, and I did a lot of other management related jobs before I came into safety. So I sort of brought that soft skill set with me into health and safety sort of 15 years ago when I got into it. So for me, it's been a fairly natural development that I've had of my workplace. But I have had a little bit of conflict with an employer previously, where they were still very much stuck in the old mentality of that it's all about compliance and we just got to look after
Yeah.
compliance and we don't have to look after the people. So yes, very much so. I think I've been there, but sometimes you get employers who've not made that same transition, and that
Mm.
becomes tricky as well.
Yeah. One of the things I always think about is trying to come up with analogies to explain the point that will resonate with the audience. So in that kind of example, I suppose, and I haven't thought about this too much, I guess, but I'm just sort of rocking and rolling with it off the top of my head. I wonder if there's an analogy there about, compliance is kind of we would see, I'm sure everybody on this call would see that as kind of the bare minimum, and we should be striving for something well beyond that. But I wonder whether, therefore, we can try and put compliance into a an analogy of, I don't know, something like maybe if you're in a factory, your production, it's kind of your bare minimum production ratio or something like that. And actually, what you as the business want is you don't want to be making 1,000 of these a week and therefore not making any profit. You want to be making 1,500 a week, and that's how you actually achieve your success. I don't know whether there's maybe something there just off the top of my head as a way of trying to get that point across. It's going to be different for every single organization, obviously, but because people are going to care about different things. But yeah, I don't know if you've come across anything like that, Mike.
I've not really, no, but that is a really good point. I think that's a nice way of putting it. And yes, going beyond compliance was always the buzzword that we've used, and doing that bit more, and being there for our people. I think those are sort of concepts I've used to drive these changes, and mostly they've had a good reception. I think
Hmm.
when you see, and they see that you get the people behind you as well. Um, it does work. And another I'm a really big advocate also of the nudge factor. So
Yeah,
when you see particularly middle management, where the problem usually lies, when you see them doing the right thing, recognize it, make it
yeah,
easier for them to do the right thing to support their people.
yeah.
And it's that sort of influencing once again, which is very much part of your health and safety role today, which
Hmm.
it probably wasn't 20 years ago when I first got into the industry.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Well, thank you, Mike. Feel free to chip in again if anything else springs to mind. If I ever manage to say anything else that's of value, then I'd always appreciate you letting me know. Um, so here's a question to try and get some more feedback. If you could change one thing about safety tomorrow, if you had the power to change one thing, imagine you were the Prime Minister or something, and you could just change one thing about safety, what would you change about safety? This might try to focus us in on where perhaps there is that room for us to change, and where the world of safety is evolving into, by way of, where there are some challenges and potentially problems that we perhaps could be doing a little bit better on. Let me know what your thoughts are in the chat on that, or if you want to come and chat to me as well, then feel free. Richard, how are you doing today?
Hi, Christian. Busy as ever, which is always good, better than sitting twiddling the thumbs.
That's true. Yeah.
Um, if there was one thing I would change if I had the power, I would actually make it a mandatory requirement that directors have to have a qualification in health and safety.
Yeah.
It's when somebody starts out as a one-person business, they're only hurting themselves. But as soon as they employ just one person, the full weight of UK law applies, other than having to write down the risk assessments.
Hmm.
But as businesses grow and you take on more management personnel, you take on a health and safety professional, the directors quite often don't understand the true legal implications on themselves, especially if
Yeah.
something goes wrong and all of a
Mm.
sudden the HSE, the police, the local authority, the judiciary are actually involved. Um, a lot of people don't know, especially in SMEs, don't know the potential for Section 37 under the consent and connivance if you've agreed to do something wrong or sort of ignore something so you can get something actually done.
Yeah.
From that point of view. So I would make it mandatory that directors have to have some form of meaningful qualification so they don't necessarily know the technical ins and outs of legislation, but as much as anything else, they know the court process
Yeah.
from the point of the charge or the indictment is being read out to them in court, and then working backwards through how the courts work, how an investigation works to you've had this incident on your site, whatever it was. And if you'd led health and safety proactively and managed it, you wouldn't now be stood in the dock.
Yeah. Yeah. Out of interest, Richard, what do you think that could or should look like? Because obviously, if you think about something like a NEBOSH, that's going to take a quite considerable amount of time to do. Is that the kind of thing you think, that level, or do you think something a bit sort of less than that, or where would you suggest?
I don't think it matters who the accrediting kind of body is. I don't think they need to do a 2-week certificate course or a sort of 6-week diploma course. But even the couple of 1 and 2 day courses available from NEBOSH and the HSE and from IOSH at the moment, there's very little on the judiciary process at the start of the sessions and roles and responsibilities and liabilities for directors. And they very quickly start getting into technical ins and outs about risk assessments, control measures, and then even delving into legislation. I think something bigger than that is actually needed. I think you can't say holistic because that would cover everything about everything, and you can't do that.
Right.
But just the wider understanding of you're taking on this responsibility by running a business. The lives of your employees are in your hands. This is the personal consequences on yourself. When I'm delivering training to directors and I say, does everyone in this room know you could go to prison for 2 years and face an unlimited fine in the same way your company could if it's charged with corporate manslaughter? And you just see colour drain from the faces. But we've never seen anything serious. No, but what if? And until they start and look at this is what could happen, not what we've seen in the past because it's history and it's gone. Until that change comes in, that's where the situation is. Mock tribunals are great. Mock health and safety prosecutions are great. But you've got to make everybody go there. And apart from one held by WorkNest earlier in this year, which was absolutely fantastic, most of these prosecution events, the prosecution does a really good job. There's so little in the way of the defence argument that an idiot could find this person company. But WorkNest did one earlier in the year, and the people playing the part of the company were really sort of fighting back hard and about employee responsibilities and contributory factors and everything else. And 3/4 of the way through the day, you thought, this company's actually going to get away with this. It wasn't till the last sort of little bit of stuff came in from the prosecution that you thought, no, now you're actually banged to rights. I think that's the kind of thing that directors need to know. Then you employ the specialists to do the technical work, but you've got to then listen to what you're being told.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. Yeah. So I thought I'd ask about because, obviously the more onerous you were to make that, then the more difficult it would be to implement. Mike, did you have a follow-up question or comment about that?
Just a comment about that, and I think this sort of talks to what we were talking about earlier on. That it's the role of the health and safety professional to influence these directors, to get them in the right thing, to do that training for them. That's the way I see my role within the organisation. That it's my duty to train and inform the directors and get them to understand their responsibilities. So in terms of safety, it's very much more that to give health and safety people more confidence to talk up to board level and on the shop floor to get people to look out for each other. That's sort of things I would like to be able to change, and that's more of a God gift than a politician gift. But if we could get that right, then we'd be in a great position.
Yeah. God gifts are allowed instead of politician gifts for this. I saw a really good suggestion actually from Katerina in the chat here about this. One thing about safety I would change. to include risk assessment in the school syllabus to embed a culture of safety from childhood. I think that's a really good idea. And I mean, there's so much. Don't get me started on the school system in terms of what the school system teaches and how it teaches it, and whether that is fit for purpose for the future world of work in the world of AI and all that kind of stuff. But you know, that is definitely something that would be a good thing to do. You know, we're teaching about religion. We're teaching. I've got kids in primary school. We're teaching about religion. We're teaching about um, sex education and things like that. You know, all important topics for life. Why not teach them a little bit about how to do dynamic risk assessment and keep people safe? I think that would definitely be a good thing. Come back in, Richard. Yeah, feel free.
Yeah, I was with you on that all the way through until you used the immortal three words dynamic risk assessment. Because
Sorry.
so often when people aren't when things go wrong and incidents have occurred, and you say, or I'm talking to people saying, "Where's your risk assessments? Where have you done?" Oh, we do a dynamic risk assessment. If you do this task all day every day, you can't use dynamic risk assessments as a defence because that's not planning for the risk. It's not actually tackling
No.
it. If we're
Yeah.
if we're training police officers, fire officers, medical staff in the NHS, then yeah, you're going to have dynamic risk assessments. But day to day, we've got to stop this allowance of dynamic risk assessments in the same way we've got to still stop people saying, I've got grandfather rights on something.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, sorry. I'm obsessed with dynamic risk assessment since my conversation that I mentioned earlier this morning with Andy, because he was giving me all sorts of great examples of dynamic risk assessments when dealing with getting people out of crisis situations. But no, you're right. I think it can be a bit of a crutch, can't it? So, and again, you know, that's something where you know we should be thinking about, okay, as the world is evolving, as the workplace is evolving, as Adele said, how does safety need to evolve? And that, you know, that definitely is a way we can do that. So a few final sort of headline thoughts that I think would be good to discuss. Um, are we talking here about safety disappearing, or are we talking about safety evolving? Um, and I suppose, what does value look like in the new safety landscape? So, you know, as I said earlier, really, you know, some people would say safety's stuck. It's very much about box ticking. It's very compliance heavy, compliance driven. You know, is that going to cut it in the new world? Um, what do we need to do and think about when it comes to keeping ourselves relevant and adding value and you know, making sure that if we are getting embedded into organizations, it's because it's for the right reasons. We're getting the right kinds of outcomes. Who owns safety? I'd be interested to know, actually. Let us know in the chat. You know, if you're in an organization, who do you actually report into? That would be an interesting thing for us to think about. There's quite a few of us on this call. Who do you actually report into? Do you report into the CEO or the MD? Do you report into HR? Do you report into ops? Is there a risk function? Um, because I think, you know, that piece has definitely changed quite a lot over the years in terms of who is owning that safety. And ultimately, as I'm sure Richard would say, you know, the CEO owns that risk ultimately from a legal perspective. Um, but you know, safety used to be just about safety, and then it was health and safety, and now it's environment, health and safety, and then it's um, mental health, and then it's, you know, we're adding all things on, and then we're moving to a different place, and we're um, reporting into different people. So we've got some COOs, MDs, deputy chief execs. So even within those few comments, excuse me, we're seeing that we're reporting into different different places. So I suppose a question for us here is, you know, are we fighting too hard to protect our turf, or or conversely, are we fighting hard enough? Are we trying to drive the agenda and shape where we sit, or are we going where the business feels that it needs us. Mike said he didn't come from a safety background. Using Mike as an example to make a wider point, could the the best safety leaders of the future come from outside of safety? Are the people to whom we're reporting going to end up being the best safety leaders ultimately, in one way or another? And then I suppose something else to think about is if we're shifting around and we're not quite sure where we fit and we're going into different places within the organization, how well are we evolving the way we do things to fit in with the language of business? How well are we able to quantify the benefits that we're bringing? How well are we able to explain the value that we offer and make sure that that is understood by these other people? And again, that goes back to the point we made about fitting in and bringing value and making sure that we're persuading and influencing the right sorts of people. Here's a comment. Some of the best safety people I know came from production backgrounds. At that time, production came first, but once they changed roles, they knew everything that was wrong, and they started to drive changes. Yeah, that's that. And then if we were starting from scratch, if there was no such thing as safety, and we were us lot were bunched up together in a room, or on a Zoom call like we really are, thinking about, all right, we've got to create something here, and the kind of idea was safety. How would we do that? I certainly believe, for example, that the word safety has some baggage to it. So, this is called the Safety Roundtable because it's designed for safety professionals. But if I were doing a session like this and I wanted to get non-safety people to come, the last thing I would do would be to call it safety, because I think that would put a lot of people off. And actually, the people that it would put off would be the people that would benefit most from attending, if you know what I mean. The people that would come irrespective of the word safety are probably the people that are passionate about safety, believe in the value of safety, etc. already. But the people that don't feel like that would be the ones that would be put off. Mike, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I think it naturally belongs in with risk. And essentially, safety for me is risk related to people and employees.
Yeah.
And so it falls into the broader risk category, and that's where it naturally lives.
Yeah, yeah. And that's kind of why on the podcast, I call it safety and risk, because I do think that the two are very aligned, and there's a benefit to people in safety in understanding risk better, and there's a benefit to risk people understanding safety better because the two do link. But obviously, lots and lots of organisations, certainly in the sort of SME space, wouldn't have a risk person. Once you get into bigger organisations, obviously they definitely do. The other benefit of that, and I had a conversation about this recently on the podcast with a guy called Ben Cooney, who is a risk manager for a big property management company. The other benefit of aligning safety and risk is that you can unlock funding. You can more easily get the quantifiable results of what you've done in terms of insurance claims and costs and so on and so forth. So yeah, definitely feel like that is a positive thing if we can get safety and risk more well aligned.
And I think generally in the SMEs, as you said, the whole risk part of the organization is managed by the financial director and the financial team.
Yeah.
And that is also quite a nice home for safety as well in a lot of ways, because you're often looking for money to do whatever you need to do. And if you're in the financial department, it's you're the first step on the way there already.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, we've got to get the budget and the investment to make the world and our organization safer. So yeah, that absolutely makes good sense. And yeah, typically in the SME space, the FD is going to be dealing with the insurance and all that sort of stuff. So that does make very, very good, very, very good sense. I like this here in the chat from Arvin. The new safety landscape moves from being primarily about compliance and preventing visible harm to proactively building organizational capability, human resilience, and a culture of continuous learning and well-being that ultimately drives overall business performance and sustainability. It's a very long sentence, but I think it really captures what we've been talking about today. Actually, it's a great summary to what we're saying here, which is we've got to get away from this compliance focus and be broader, bring value, think about these other aspects. But also, I would say we've got to try to be protective as well. What we absolutely don't want is that safety gets watered down, right? None of us would want that. Safety's got to continue to be of primary importance, and we've got to fight for that. And again, that's where our influencing and our persuasion skills will come in. So thanks for joining today. Really interesting discussion, and thank you in particular to those that came and had a chat with me, and everybody that joined in to the chat as well. It's a big topic. It's an ongoing discussion. We haven't covered everything today. Clearly, this is a conversation that will continue and should continue. So feel free to get involved in the LinkedIn group, the Safety and Risk Success LinkedIn group. If you're not a member of that, then do join the group, and we can continue this and other discussions all around safety and risk. So appreciate it. And once again, we're going to have a little break from the Safety Roundtable now for August, but we will be back in September. And for those of you that know, September is a big month for our organisation. We spend the whole month talking about Sliptember, so we can look forward to some good conversations about slips, trips, falls, and all of that fun stuff in September. So thank you again for joining. Have a great summer, and we will see you again soon.
Thanks for joining us on the Safety and Risk Success podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit follow and do share on social media. Does anyone you know spring to mind as a great guest, even yourself? If so, please contact us on podcast@slipsafety.co.uk. See you next week for another episode.